Welcome back. I'm Kathleen.
I'm Kim.
And we're the K&K
twins.
twins. So you're here joining us for uncomfortable conversation with the K&K twins.
Absolutely. And we've been actually having an uncomfortable conversation this whole time in preparing for this. So one day we'll show you all of our uncomfortable conversation clips.
Leading up to this.
Yeah,
So this is episode 6.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk today about blinders.
And let me just say, we have been requested to do more of this. We are in demand, people. People want what we have to offer.
Yeah, right.
We have a fan. We have a fan.
A fan. So,
hey, fan.
Hi, fan. Thanks for following us.
So today we're going to do episode 6, and we're talking about blinders. And blinders is a concept that we really have to kind of dig in and understand, because what it means is that we're restricting our view and removing distractions. And so in the case of horses, they put blinders on horses so that they can't see from side to side and nothing distracts them. Well, we do that to ourselves. And as codependents, we wear these blinders that restrict us, and it restricts our view of life, which means we don't see anything clearly.
It restricts our perception of reality.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. So we think we're just kind of removing distractions, but what we're really doing is removing our ability to see things clearly. And like this other K twin said, we don't see the reality, and it's not helpful. And one of the things we really want to strive to do as codependents is get out of the habit of living in denial and living in our untruths, because we create this world of lies, which is not nice to say, but that's the truth. And so we're going to deal with truth here, y'all people.
So when any new information comes in that threatens our perception of reality, so if someone says to us, hey, you know what, that's not okay, or that's not normal, he shouldn't treat you that way, or she shouldn't say that to you, that's not okay, we want to reject that, because that threatens our familiar pattern of behavior, of our lack of objectivity.
So that's something we really need to be aware of as codependents, especially, but really in this world of people where we are interdependent. We really do need each other to function and to live full, healthy lives. So when you have people that you love and you trust that are saying things to you like, this person's not good for you, that behavior's not normal, we as codependents are usually very quick to dismiss that and deny it and say it's not true. But if you're hearing that from multiple sources, you need to stop,
listen,
and evaluate that and listen to that, because those are people who love you.
I used to tell my daughter that, look, who loves you more than anybody else in the world? Who wants you to be happy, right? Mom and dad. So when your family, the people who love you the most and care the most about you, if they're telling you they're seeing red flags in a relationship, or they're saying, hey, I don't really think this person is, even if it's a friendship, I don't think this is healthy, I don't think this is a good person for you, you need to stop and give some weight to that and listen and see if that's maybe real.
Well, and I think a lot of times, especially as codependents, we're looking for validation from other people. And so we'll go to people and go, okay, is this normal? When they tell you no, it's not normal, don't ignore that.
But codependents rarely go to somebody and ask, is this normal? Because we don't have that insight.
Is that part of the
That's
healing?
part of the healing. We've gotten there. But if you're still in codependency and haven't recognized that, you don't even know to do that. So if somebody comes to you out of love and concern, drop the defensiveness. Drop because we do feel threatened when they not attack, but when it feels like they're attacking our reality, okay? But we have to remember, we lack objectivity. So we don't see reality.
Because we talked about that last time, our lack of objectivity. So remember, because you don't see things clearly, you really need other people.
You do.
Especially until you can learn to see things clearly. You need people to help us see things the way they really are. So there are several different types of blinders. We're going to talk about, in this episode, we're going to talk about 4 of them. Okay, so we're going to talk about filtering information. We're going to talk about defending the offender. We're going to talk about how we redefine pain, and then we're going to talk about proclaiming perfect perception in this episode. Yeah, it's all a bunch of lies.
Keep in mind that these blinders, we use these blinders to adapt our behavior and thinking to the wishes of the dysfunctional people in our lives. So if we're in a dysfunctional relationship, we use those blinders to kind of keep our thinking in line with that dysfunctional person. Blinders really keep codependents in bondage.
Yeah.
Okay. So it represents control. So we use them to control ourselves. Dysfunctional people use them to control us. Because we cannot see that reality. Just keep that in mind. We lack objectivity. If you suspect that you're codependent, this is a truth for you.
Yeah.
You lack objectivity. So you need to have outside sources of information to help you filter truth.
And as codependents, we remove the truth. We remove a substantial amount of truth. It's like it doesn't exist. And especially if it's painful for us. And that's why we have these coping mechanisms, is because we've dealt with so much pain, specifically, starting in our childhood usually, and going through our lives. So we've created these ways of walking through the world where we just remove things that we don't like. And that's where filtering information comes in. So, for example, if when the alcoholic or abusive husband says, I'll never drink again, I'll never hit you again, I'll never do whatever, the codependent wife so desperately wants to believe this that she's like relieved. Oh, finally he understands. Oh, finally he's going to change. And then there's so much joy because there's hope. You think there's hope, right? But that's not the reality. The history is that the abuse and the broken promises will happen again and again and again. That's the truth. But
that's the reality.
We filter this information and we go, oh, that's not going to happen this time. We completely ignore the reality. And one of the things that I learned in my coming out of my codependent behavior was I really did not require that words and actions match. I would listen to the words that were being said to me, and the actions never matched, but still I believed the words. Like, that's crazy. How could you tell me something, you never actually do the behavior you say you're going to do, and I still, every time you say it, I still think you're going to do it. I still think you're going to be on time, even though you're never, ever, ever on time. I still think you're...
We want to believe.
Yes.
And so we're such Pollyannas. If anyone, that's probably a reference
it depends
some
on how
folks
old you
are too
are
old to understand, but we are very naive in certain ways. But it's a learned naivete.
It is.
Because it's about survival.
It is.
It's about survival. We learn that.
And protecting ourselves.
And protecting
this
ourselves,
is how
yes.
we protect ourselves, and we've done it for so long. That it really does feel normal. But one of the things we were just discussing is, as easy as it feels like it is to kind of stay in these habits and stay in these perpetual cycles, it's actually so much easier to walk through the healing. Doesn't that feel better?
Yes.
To go, wait a minute, like this is what happened in my situation. So my ex-husband would always say things and I would believe it and go, oh yeah, okay, so this is going to get done and that's going to get done. And one day my daughter said to me, Mom, why do you think he's going to do that? He never does that. And I was like, oh, she was a child. I was like, oh, like she could see what was right in front of both of us. But in my need to protect myself, or my habit of protecting myself, I didn't even want to see the truth. Denial is a part of our codependent behavior. Filtering this information. He says it, I'm going to believe it. And part of it, I think, is just kind of the way I was raised too, which is part of this whole codependent thing, is we are raised in these patterns. But the truth is, he was never going to change his behavior. And
they aren't going to keep those promises.
No.
They're not going to change their behavior because they don't really think they need to.
Right.
They say what they think you want to hear to shut you up, just to get you off their back so they can continue doing what they want to do.
But the truth is, there was freedom in me, for me, when my daughter said, why do you think he's going to do that? I was like, oh, why do I think that? And the truth, the Bible says the truth sets us free. It does. I was freed in that moment when my child showed me the truth, which is right in front of me. So it's really important that we don't filter the information that we're given through this lens of denial and Pollyannaism, which I don't think is a word, but you know, y'all know what it means.
But that's the thing, is that we need to always make sure that we're open to other people, their perspective and their opinions, and listening to others, because we do lack objectivity. Now, you have to filter out when it's a dysfunctional, abusive person that's feeding you lies.
That's true.
But it's really good. Like Kim and I always say how blessed we are. Like we are a gift to each other, that the Lord brought us together because we're walking the same journey together. We have very similar backgrounds. And it's so wonderful to have somebody that I can say, okay, I need to verbally process this with you. Okay, am I seeing this real? Is this reality, or is this objective? You know, am I seeing this objectively? I need you to look at this with me and help me to see this, so we can walk this. And I will tell you, we're here today because we have walked this path and gone through this healing process.
Are walking through it still.
And we have found such tremendous freedom. We have found truth. We have changed.
Absolutely.
Which is so amazing.
Huge.
In the beginning, we both said this before, we were terrified. Anytime we get faced with the truth and we have stuffed emotion, repressed emotions, denied reality for years and years and years, the thought of addressing those things is so terrifying. But wow, what freedom has come from that.
I was scared to death. And, you know, even I was, and I'm one of those people that says I'm not scared of anything, which is, you know, part of my whole
denial.
That's one of the ones we'll talk about in a little bit. I'm not scared of anything, but I was terrified, and I'm not even sure. I thought I wouldn't be able to handle the pain. But the truth is, there's so much freedom in it that it actually feels better to go. You know what? They're not going to change,
right?
But I don't have to believe it. And just like Kathleen saying, you know, we really use each other as a sounding board. We just sat at dinner, and the first thing I said is, I need you to tell me if what I'm thinking is normal, if I'm being codependent in how I'm processing through this, because I know I can't see it clearly. I know. I've learned I can't see it clearly.
Right.
I thought in the beginning, I thought in the very beginning I was seeing everything.
Oh, we do. We think we're so insightful.
We are for other people.
I'm so self-perceptive.
For other
For other people.
We see really super clearly.
Yeah, we are, because codependents tend to be very empathetic.
Yes.
So we can empathize with people and see things.
Yes, we can put ourselves.
But we can't see ourselves. So you need somebody else that is safe. Now, this is a key word, you guys. It has to be somebody safe who's going to speak truth into your life.
In love.
But that you trust them, that they are really have your best interests at heart. Yeah. Like Kim knows, if I'm going to talk to her and tell her some truth, it's because I love her. I care about her. I want her to be happy. She knows she can trust that. I'm not going to sabotage or undermine or manipulate in any way. We are so open and raw and real with each other that if she comes to me, I'm like, okay. And sometimes it's hurtful. Like, you know, one time at work just recently with one of our coworkers, telling me, you know, you're reacting based on previous experiences. You're bringing your baggage to bear that has nothing to do with this person. And at first I was like, what? Wait, that's not, And then I had to stop and think, this is Kim. This is Kim talking to me in love. I need to listen to this and process this. And I thought, you know what? She's right. My perception of this situation is not right. It's not clear, and it's not fair. It's not fair to this other person that I'm projecting these things onto. That's a completely different person than my previous experience. So it was so helpful, and it really helped me from damaging a work relationship because I was able to see that and think, you know what? She's right. That's not.
You know what's interesting? The people pleaser in me and the codependent in me was like, how do I say this?
Right.
Because I can see what's happening, but I don't want to hurt her feelings. But it's dishonest of me to not tell you. We have a trust.
Right.
Like, if I don't tell you, who's going to tell you?
Right.
And not in an ugly way, but we've given each other permission to speak into our lives, to speak truth into our lives, because I know her situation well enough to say that what you're feeling and what you're seeing are not the same. Here's the truth. I love you. Here's the truth. And you don't have to see things that way. You don't have to walk in this lie, because she was walking in a lie.
I was walking in a lie. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So breaking free of that bondage, I can't even explain to you the difference that it makes in your life and in your relationships and how you walk through the world. And we're going to talk about some of the anger and all the stuff that comes with that.
Yeah.
We really want to share a little bit more of ourselves and our story now. I think we've kind of set the stage with the codependency. So we're going to share some more personal experiences as we go through. So bear with us. We hope you appreciate some of these and can relate to some of these. But so anyway, we'll continue.
You want to, okay, you want to go here? Oh, no, okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, sometimes as a codependent, in terms of filtering information, we're going to hear and see those things that we dread. We're always going to see the worst. We're going to hear the worst. So let's say you have an evaluation at work and your manager tells you 10 things. 9 of those things are complimentary. 9 are things that you do well, that are your strengths, that are good. They give you one area for improvement. What do you think the codependent's going to do? They're going to discard those 9, and they're going to dwell and agonize and rehash over that
and we beat ourselves up over that one thing.
That one area of improvement that we perceive as this huge negative thing, right? So we filter information based on our brokenness. We filter it to fit our brokenness. So we buy into our own lies, right? So, yeah. So that's one, filtering information. So be aware of that.
So, and if that's you, if when you're hearing these things, if you go, oh my gosh, that's me. You know, you tell me 9 great things about myself. You tell me one thing that is an area of improvement, a constructive criticism, and we start beating ourselves up. If that's you, you're normal. Let's start there. You're normal.
Yeah, you're normal.
You're also codependent, probably.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
We can take that little piece of information and learn from it and celebrate, which is also what we're not good at as codependents, because we don't see even the good things objectively.
We don't.
Celebrate those 9 great things. Like, that's okay too. Because we beat ourselves up over this whole perfectionism thing.
Right.
Okay, so we talked about filtering information. Let's go on to number 2, which is defending.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No. But I want you folks to know that if this is resonating with you and you are feeling very much like, oh my gosh, anything that we're saying here in these podcasts, if you're saying, I think this is me, and you start to feel, panicky or overwhelmed, there is hope.
Yes.
We're going to walk through this and we're going to give you ways to address this. First, we have to understand what the problem is.
Yeah.
Before we can fix it, we have to admit there is a problem. We have to identify, what is it really? What does codependency mean? And what does it mean to me in my life? And then the steps we take to walk out of that. Okay?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Don't feel hopeless. There is hope. If we can change, anybody can change. So we've
been living this way a long time.
Decades.
Decades. But gosh, every day gets so much better as we learn and grow together. Okay, so that's a very good point. So defending the offender is a big one, and here's where, instead of honestly feeling the hurt of betrayal or experiencing the anger of being abused or being neglected or being used, whatever that pain is, we as the codependent, instead we'll defend the person who's offended us. And we'll make excuses for them, and we'll justify their behavior, and we'll say things like, well, he was really tired, or he's under a lot of stress, or it really doesn't bother me, or I deserved it. There's another one. If I hadn't been so loud, he wouldn't have woken up, and he wouldn't have gotten upset.
Or I'm used to it. It's okay. I'm used to it by now. Or he really can't help it. She can't help it. She's, this, that, and the other thing. So we make all those excuses. But
so I really started thinking about this, and I thought about this on a few different levels. Why do we do this? Why do we make excuses for people's bad behavior? Why do we say, oh, it's us, when it's not?
Right.
When it's them? Why do we defend bad behavior even outside of ourselves? If we see a famous person who's done something wrong, why do we say, oh, well, if a woman was raped, we say, well, she shouldn't have been wearing that, or she
shouldn't have walked through that park at night. Or...
Right. Why are we so quick to defend the offender? Why are we so quick to negate the victim?
The reality of the victim's experience.
And I've really been processing this. And I think I think it has to do with control. I think it has to do with power. And as codependents, we really struggle with being controlled. We struggle with wanting to control other people. But I was trying to figure out how it all starts, because all of these start with our family of origin. These are things we've learned all of our lives, right? So as we were talking about this, we started going, our parents to us are godlike.
Right.
So
when you're a very small child,
yeah,
you see your parents as infallible.
Yes.
And that's where we draw our first sense of identity
Exactly.
from, our foundation of who we are.
So if our parents in any way and let's be real, be clear, it's not intentional when our parents make us feel unloved, or when we feel unloved by behaviors of our parents or whatever. But imagine being a child and your number one need, like not just desire, but need, like you need food, you need water, you need love, right? So if that need for love, if you feel like your parents don't love you, that would be fatal. Like lack of food would be fatal.
Terrifying.
It would be, yeah.
As a child, to think that this all-knowing, godlike being that our parents are doesn't want our best interest, doesn't love us, isn't able to nurture and care for us the way we need to be as a child, that is absolutely death. That just feels terrifying.
Yeah.
It feels like we can't survive that.
Our coping mechanism for that, is what I'm kind of verbally processing here. Our coping mechanism for that is we make excuses for them.
Yep. Absolutely.
And we go, well, it must be me.
We blame ourselves.
And we don't go, I'm not lovable, but we go, I did too much.
Must have been me. Must have been this.
I was too loud. My grades weren't good enough. I put too much pressure on them. I bothered them when they were whatever.
Right.
So this starts off very, very young. Very, very young. But it doesn't just stay with us. I feel like it's a cultural problem.
I think it carries out into the world, definitely.
I do.
Out to society.
I do.
As codependents, this is such an interesting dichotomy to me, because codependents who defend the offender are also good at blaming the victim, which is typically themselves. So both blaming the victim and defending the offender excuse the one who is inflicting the hurt, that is inflicting the wrong behavior. It excuses them from any blame or guilt. While at the same time, the codependent, who is typically the victim, not only bears the hurt, the brunt of that hurt, but also takes the blame for that hurt. So here's the cycle. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say we abdicate our power.
We do.
We give our power away.
That's a great way to say it. Absolutely. So here's kind of the cycle. This dysfunctional person, the offender, does us wrong, does something wrong to us, hurts us, betrays us, does something wrong. We may call them out, or maybe we just say, hey, you know what? That hurt. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel right. You shouldn't do that to me. I don't want you to do that to me. The offender, the dysfunctional person, gets angry, turns it around, yells, blames you, whatever. And the codependent finds themselves accepting that blame, blaming themselves, maybe even apologizing for their wrong behavior.
For the other person's wrong behavior.
Yes.
We take it on ourselves and we say, oh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have gotten you that upset. Instead of having them be responsible for their behavior, we take it on ourselves.
It's crazy. And so if you look at it from a child's, not even a child's perspective, let's say in a marriage relationship even, or even in a friendship. So if I were to acknowledge that his behavior is wrong or hurtful, okay, and maybe isn't acting in my best interest, then I'm going to have to face the truth of, one, maybe this person doesn't really love me. Two, maybe this person really isn't looking out for my best interest. Maybe they really aren't caring for me the way they should. Or, maybe they don't want what's best for me. Basically, I have to come to the truth that the relationship is broken. It's not healthy. It's not good for me. It's not what I need. And that can be terrifying.
That is.
Because especially if you're not emotionally strong enough to act on that. You know what I mean?
And if you've put your identity, I'll say for me, I put my identity in my marriage. So for me to think that my husband didn't love me, like that would be almost, it would have felt fatal. It would have felt like I was going to die. Do you want me to do it?
Exactly. No. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay.
Be right back.
Okay. So, you know, you need help, but that's okay. So let's talk about the next one. The next one is redefining pain. And this is where we take our repressing hurt and anger and turn it inwardly, and it actually makes us sick. So if we're being objective about our deep hurt, if we're seeing that our anger produces guilt and pain, that's almost unfathomable, but that's what we do. So what we do is we take these repressed feelings, we keep them inside, and it turns into physical ailments. Okay? So Kathleen, you want to talk about your book? No, you want to talk about your book? We're talking about redefining pain.
Oh, yes.
So,
Okay.
and how we take this
Okay,
physical
sorry.
pain, take this physical pain. So
Yes.
Kathleen told me about a book called The Body Keeps the Score.
Right. I work with human trafficking survivors. And a lot of times one of the things we talk about, well, that's one of the books that we recommend, because one of the things we talk about is how when you have trauma on any level, when you have any kind of trauma and you're kind of repressing those emotions, you're not dealing with them, that stress, that trauma is going to manifest itself somehow. It's got to come out somehow. So typically it comes out physically with physical ailments. So folks who experience trauma tend to have health problems because if they're not dealing with things. If they're dealing with them, that's
But we as
healthy.
codependents don't
Right?
usually deal with things, by the way.
We don't.
Yeah.
Oh no, we don't deal with our emotions. So we do tend to repress any anger, any negative, what we can perceive as negative
Yeah.
emotions. But so a lot of codependents will suffer from migraines or tension headaches. They're really tension headaches, but they call them migraines, right? Did you talk about how that if it's physical, then it's not their fault, kind of a thing?
No, I didn't talk
Okay,
about that.
all right. So because we tend to label these physical ailments or our repressed emotions and our trauma as something else, it shifts the focus of the source of the problem to strictly physical rather than emotional. And then it's because it's not our fault. So it's out of our control. There's nothing we can do about it. So it kind of gives us an out not to deal with it. Because if it's physical, I can't help that.
Right.
So
But that's also part of the denial.
yes,
You
it's due to our unwillingness to deal with our emotions and our pain.
But it makes sense that it will have to manifest itself somehow. Because, energy is real. It has to go somewhere. And, like let's say if you drink water, it fills up your bladder. There's a physical response to that. And if you don't empty your bladder, well, it will explode.
Right?
You will
And this
explode.
could be bad news.
And that's bad. And the same thing happens to us emotionally. It fills up and it has to go somewhere.
It's going to come
So
out.
it might be a headache. It might be high blood pressure. It might be clinical depression. It might be an ulcer.
Anxiety.
It
Panic attacks.
It has to come.
Anxiety
it has to
and
do
panic
something.
attacks. Yeah.
It has to go somewhere.
Upset stomachs,
Yes.
ulcers. I was telling Kim, she knows this, that when I was in middle school, I'm a middle school student, I got diagnosed with an ulcer. I was in 8th grade. What 8th grader has an ulcer? Clearly there's some stress and some things going on at home, right? So, but I wasn't able to articulate the stress and the anxiety of what was happening at home and just the emotional stuff that was going on with, an emotionally distant father who was very rigid, who was very disciplinary based, very focused on punishment for the tiniest infraction, with a mom who was hypercritical. Nothing was ever right. Nothing was ever good enough. There was no nurturing. There was no compassion. There was no support. All the nurturing things as a child you need was lacking for me. And so that manifested itself in those physical kinds of things.
So you know what that says to me? That part of our responsibility as parents. So for those of you who, especially if you have smaller children, children still living at home, part of what this tells me is part of our responsibility as healthy parents is to teach our children to be able to process, to feel their feelings, to understand their feelings, to talk about their feelings, to work through their feelings, because if they don't know how to do that, obviously, we know that people who don't have coping skills, can become addicts and alcoholics,
right,
and all of that. But workaholics, yes. But it also manifests itself in other ways physically. So that's what that's telling me is,
right,
you know what, part of my job as a mom is to teach my kids how to work through this stuff so that they don't have they don't have physical pain. They've worked through it.
Right.
They go, you know what?
Yeah.
I feel hurt. It hurt my feelings that this person did that to me, and work through that.
And allow your child to be honest.
Yeah.
If you did react in anger or was short-tempered or whatever, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't make you a terrible parent. Just own that. If the child cries and says, Mommy, that hurt my feelings, or that, don't say that to me. Yikes. Okay.
Yeah.
Instead of yelling at them or saying you're disrespecting me or don't you give me your lip or whatever, acknowledge the fact that, maybe what you did hurt them.
Yeah.
They have pain. And so acknowledge that, apologize for that, own that, walk through that with them, allow them to be able to tell you what they're feeling.
Yeah. One of my children recently told me that I was overstepping her boundaries, and that when I apologized, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, and I know my attitude was like, I'm sorry. I said, I'm sorry, get over it. And I know that's what I was probably thinking, which is not, of course, what I would have ever said. But she said to me, you know what, just because you said you're sorry doesn't mean I'm going to just forgive you right away, and doesn't mean I'm going to get over it right away, and you don't get to be mad about it. And I was in my feelings. I was like quiet and withdrawn. And I know to her, it probably looked like I was mad, but I actually said, I'm not mad. You're absolutely right. I'm working through it. I'm learning. I'm growing. So I gotta work through this one because I've behaved this way for 40 funky years.
Right.
So because you're 16 and now calling me on my shit at 16, like all of her sisters, I would have been like, you don't know what you're talking about. But she's right. I did overstep. Right. And I wasn't listening to her. And I don't get to be mad about it when she's hurt.
That is so good. I love that. That's really good.
And look, I'm over it now.
And
and next time I'll do better.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's do this. Okay.
All right. So we're going to talk about the last one in this.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to talk about proclaiming perfect perception. So that just means that we believe we're seeing things accurately. We feel like we're seeing truth when facts prove that we are not. So the perception really prevents us from seeing reality and feeling our own pain. We're just lying to ourselves.
Yes.
We think we're on it. But if we refuse to see the problem, then there's no reason to change. There's no, why would you work on yourself if there's no issues, right? So, like, I remember when I was younger, my mom and I had such a difficult, complex relationship. I remember one time saying to someone, oh yeah, my mom and I are really close. In the back of my mind, I'm saying, that's a lie. What are you saying? That's not true. But for some reason, I needed to believe that. I needed to think that.
Did you need to believe it, or did you need somebody else to believe it so that they would think better of you?
I'm not sure because I was younger then. I was in my mid-teens. And I just, for some reason, I needed to think that was true, or I needed other people to think that was true. It was not true. So I think it goes back to what you were saying about as a child. If I didn't believe that lie, then I would have to acknowledge that no, my mom in her own brokenness wasn't able to love me the way I needed to be loved. She was not able to nurture me the way me, as in my personality, what I needed. That would have been, I couldn't have handled that at that age. I couldn't have been able to acknowledge that truth. So in my denial, I had to kind of create this fantasy of what our relationship was that wasn't true.
So sad.
So, as a child, it can destroy you. So you can't handle it.
Yeah. And I probably would have been the opposite of that, where in this, like, she in proclaiming perfection was like, yes, this is what it looked like. I probably would have been the one that had been like, well, I don't need that. I'm fine. I don't need that. But here's the truth. There are love languages. I don't know if you guys know the 5 love languages, but my number 1 love language is physical touch. And in my house, there was not a lot of hugging. There was not a lot of like lovey-dovey affection.
Not at all.
There wasn't. But that is my number one love language. I need that. That makes me feel loved. I'm super handsy with my children. Some of them like it, some of them don't. I'm super handsy in all my relationships. Like, I'm a hugger. You see me, I'm going to squeeze you. And I'm going to warn you, because if you're not a hugger, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to squeeze you. But I would have been like, oh, well, I'm fine. I don't need that. I'm just not, that's the denial that but they're both the same thing, in that we are having this feeling of perfectionism and needing to appear perfect, because to me, that makes me feel like I'm in control when I don't need anybody to do anything for me. To acknowledge that, you know what, it makes me feel safe and it makes me feel loved when you just hug me and hold me.
We can't ask for that.
That would have made me feel like I was weak.
That's good.
I don't do well with weak.
Me either. My daddy was a Marine.
I don't do well with, even now, I don't do well with weak. I'm working on it.
You know, I think that's why for codependents, it's very difficult for us to ask for help or to accept help when someone offers it to us.
Very difficult.
I think you're right. It is a control thing. Yeah, it's a control thing. And it's this weakness that, like, if someone else were in a situation where they needed help, I would be quick to, I'm going to rescue you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to fix you. To me, that seems perfectly reasonable, that if somebody is ill or has an injury or whatever,
or is going to have surgery,
you would ask for that help, and you would expect to receive that help. But for us, for me, it is so hard.
I'm terrible
to ask anyone for help. And when they offer, my first response is always, no, I'm fine, I can do it. I got it. Why do we do that?
I think it's control. I think it makes me feel like I'm in control.
Yes. And we have
to not need anybody.
We've learned that people can't be depended on.
Right.
Like our exes, my ex-husband, promise after promise wasn't kept. I learned fairly quickly that I could not depend on him. I couldn't trust him. He was not going to take care of me, and he didn't act in the best interest of our marriage.
So you're not going to be disappointed. You're not going to be disappointed by the lack of help.
I just take care of myself. Same thing with my parents. I couldn't really depend on them to be there for me necessarily. I had to be there for myself. And sometimes it can make you prickly. It can make you
very much so.
A lot of walls up. You can become very hardened or cynical, or someone will say, "Ooh, he's a tough nut to crack," or "She's a tough cookie," or whatever. It can make you hard. It really can.
Oh yeah.
There
are a lot of walls.
You have to work through that. A lot of walls. Like, I used to be really sarcastic and cynical. That was an issue, and it was just.
It was a defense mechanism.
It was a defense mechanism. It took me a while to figure out how to break those habits.
Interesting.
So very interesting. So when you come across somebody like that, they may be a codependent.
Yes.
So don't tell them that, because they're not going to be open to it.
Just have empathy. I think a lot of that is that it helps us to empathize for other people and to give ourselves some grace,
right?
Because we're so hard on ourselves.
We are. So the blinders. So blinders provide a way for us to maintain the appearance of control.
Yes.
Right? They don't stop the pain.
Not actual control.
Instead, they really continue to freeze us into inaction. We're just not able to do anything because we're not acknowledging anything. Okay? So we're just going to review the first 4 of these blinders real quick. So filtering information. Basically, that's only accepting what fits into our distorted perception of reality and our lack of objectivity. It's got to fit our lack of objectivity. Number 2 is defending the offender. Excusing the person who hurt us and then blaming ourselves. Basically, that's what that is.
That's so dumb. Redefining the pain, which is labeling our pain as purely physical and avoiding dealing with the actual emotional issues that have manifested themselves physically. And then the 4th one, proclaiming perfect perception, which is denying the reality and feeling the pain to give ourselves a sense of control.
We deny reality, we deny our emotions.
We deny our
That's
pain.
how we stay in control.
Yep, we think it's how we stay in control. But they're all lies.
That's a lie.
So Thanks for sticking with us for the first
Yes,
four.
this
We're going
is
to
the
talk
first
about
four.
the last three on the next episode. So absolutely join us.
Stay with us.
We can't wait.
And if you guys, again, if you have the
Yes.
opportunity to pick up this book, it's called Untangling Relationships, A Christian Perspective on Codependency. Also, the other book that we referred to was The Body Keeps the Score. Again, that's about how trauma victims or abuse victims, survivors, how your body knows, and if you don't deal with your stuff, it's going to manifest itself physically.
It will deal with you.
Okay, it will deal with you. So you want to make sure that you deal with those. So we're
check out
going
these other resources.
Yeah, check
you
out
have
the
tools. You're not alone.
We do have tools. So
You're not
walk through this with us. I mean, go ahead and grab up this book and read through it. If you have a book club or a Bible study or just a group of friends or heck, just one other person, just have one other person you trust that are safe.
Absolutely.
You can do it together, the two of you, even just two people can do it.
And you can do it virtually. If you've got somebody who lives in another place, don't think outside the box.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining us for Uncomfortable Conversation
With the K&K twins.
We'll see you next time. Thanks. Okay.
I'm still recording.
Hey.